He arrested more than 3,000 men. He was never convicted of a crime in his life. He disguised himself as a preacher, a farmer, a drifter, and once spent 3 days living inside an outlaw gang's camp before walking out with both men in irons. His name was Bass Reeves. You've heard of the character he inspired. Arkansas, 1838. Bass Reeves was born enslaved on a farm in Crawford County. His enslaver, William Steele Reeves, gave him his surname, as was the practice of the time. The boy grew up in the fields, tall and wide-shouldered and quick with his hands, qualities that would serve a lawman one day, but first had to survive being owned. The Civil War changed the arithmetic. In the chaos of 1862, accounts differ on exactly how Reeves escaped into Indian Territory, the land west of Arkansas where 5 tribal nations had been relocated from the American Southeast. He lived among the Creek and Seminole people for years. He learned the land. He learned the languages: Cherokee, Creek, Seminole dialect, Choctaw. He could navigate terrain that turned white men around in circles. He spoke to people the white law couldn't even communicate with. When the 13th Amendment ended slavery in 1865, Bass Reeves was a free man with skills that almost no one else possessed. The federal government had a problem. Indian Territory, what is now Oklahoma, was outside the jurisdiction of state courts. The only law that operated there ran through the U.S. federal court at Fort Smith, Arkansas. Judge Isaac Parker, the hanging judge, had jurisdiction over 74,000 square miles of the most dangerous country on the continent. Outlaws knew this. Men wanted everywhere else slipped across the border into Indian Territory because the chance of a deputy marshal finding them in those 74,000 miles was slim. The territory had become a refuge for killers, bootleggers, and fugitives of every description. Parker needed deputies who could operate in that country. Men who knew it. Men who could move through it without attracting attention. Men who spoke the languages. In 1875, Bass Reeves rode to Fort Smith and was sworn in as a United States Deputy Marshal. He was the first black deputy marshal west of the Mississippi River. He was 37 years old. What followed over the next 32 years was a career with almost no parallel in American law enforcement history. Reeves served warrants in Indian Territory using methods that were creative in ways the job required and unorthodox in ways that made him a legend among outlaws who had reason to fear him. He used disguises. He would ride into a county as a farmer, as a preacher, as a down-on-his-luck drifter. Anything to get close to a wanted man without spooking him. He once approached a gang camp as a saddle tramp looking for work, ate their food, slept in their camp for 3 days while he sized up the situation, and on the 4th morning had both men handcuffed before they had finished breakfast. He was patient in a way that most men who carry guns are not. He understood that a warrant served without a shooting was better than a warrant served with one. In 32 years he killed 14 men. Only when forced to. Only when the alternative was his own death. For a lawman operating in country that produced violent confrontations constantly, 14 was a remarkably low number. He was also, by the accounts of those who worked alongside him, an exceptional shot. One of the best in the territory. He simply preferred not to use it. The story that the records remember most is one he did not seek out. His son, Benny Reeves, murdered his wife in 1902. A warrant was issued. The marshal's office quietly hoped the problem would go away. Perhaps another deputy would serve the warrant. Perhaps the whole thing would be handled quietly. Bass Reeves requested the assignment himself. He rode to where his son was hiding, served the warrant with his own hands, and brought his son in to face justice. Benny Reeves was convicted and served his sentence. He was released from prison a changed man. by the accounts available, and lived out his life quietly. Bass Reeves never spoke publicly about it. He retired from federal service in 1907 when Indian Territory became the state of Oklahoma and the federal jurisdiction that had defined his career dissolved. He took a job as a city patrolman in Muskogee. He worked until his health failed. He died in January 1910. He had served more than 3,000 warrants. He had arrested train robbers, murderers, bootleggers, and horse thieves. He had operated across a territory the size of a small country, in conditions that broke other men. He had done this while being black in an era that worked very hard to prevent black men from wielding any authority at all. No dime novelist wrote his story. No newspaper put his face on the front page in the way they did for white marshals with smaller records. The popular literature of the frontier had room for one version of the heroic lawman, and it was a version that did not include Bass Reeves. In 1933, a radio drama debuted about a heroic masked lawman who rode through Indian Territory on a white horse, accompanied by a Native American companion, serving justice in a land where the law barely reached. The Lone Ranger. The creator of the program, George Trendle, said publicly that the character was inspired by stories of actual Texas Rangers. He did not mention Bass Reeves. People who knew the territory recognized the silhouette anyway. A lone lawman, a mask to disguise himself, deep knowledge of the land and the people. 3,000 served warrants, 32 years. The most decorated deputy marshal in the history of the federal court at Fort Smith. His name was Bass Reeves. You should know it. If this story hit you the way it hits me, hit the like button. It costs nothing and it tells the algorithm this history deserves to be found. Share it with someone who deserves to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. There are 60 of these coming. One story, one person, one era at a time. Subscribe, like, share. I'll see you in the next one.